Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Karen Finn, and I'm very honored to be here for episode 25 of Expert Mind Talks, brought to you by Mind Journal. Our topic for today is what keeps you from being happy? I mean, we all want to be happy, yet somehow we have a challenge with actually achieving our desired result. And I'm going to tell you that I believe that what keeps us from being happy, each and every one of us, is actually a pretty simple answer. And when you hear it, you're probably going to roll your eyes and be frustrated. That's what I'm going to say, but it's still true. Okay, so I think the simple and actually complex answer is that it's you. I think that we each have a tendency to keep ourselves from being happy. And it's not the easiest to realize that it's kind of up to you to make yourself happy, but it's true. And it wasn't an easy conclusion for me to come to, because goodness knows when I was struggling with situational depression when I got divorced, I sure didn't think that I had any control over me being happy. But what I've learned and practiced and taught for over 20 years now is that we each hold the keys to our own happiness. It's not out there, somebody's not going to hand us the key to happiness. It's actually stuff we have to find for ourselves. So what I'd like to start off our discussion with is a little bit about 8 things we all have a tendency to do that actually keeps us from being happy. Okay, so the first item is living in the past. Have you ever caught yourself thinking about, if I would have done this differently, or I should have done this, or whatever about the past, and kind of stuck there? When you send your attention to the past, you're not being present, and you can't be present to experience happiness now. And, I get it. It's way too easy to think things like, but I was at my happiest when I, and then, kind of fill in the blank here. Or I can't get over whatever it is, that happened in the past. And the deal is that the more you keep going back to that and ruminating on it, the more you're robbing yourself of being present right now. Because right now is when your life is happening. So if you find that you do have some troubles with living in the past, and like I said, we all do, and yes, that includes me, right? That you can do a few things here that might help you shift out of that and be more present, so you can actually finally let go of the past. You might have some amends to make with people, and if you do, you want to make them. There might be some things that you simply need to accept. I know when I was going through my divorce, I need to accept that my marriage was over, and that part of my life was over, and that I needed to move on. And, it's much easier said than it was done for me back then. But hey, we all live and learn, right? And that's what I'm inviting y'all to do here too, with learning how to be happy. Sometimes people also live in the past because they think that, oh, I used to love doing this, and they get kind of nostalgic about it. Well, if that's something that you're doing, you can actually say, why did I really give this up? Can I bring more of that back into my life? Can I reinvent how I do that? And you may even along the way discover new passions and things that you love doing. So the deal is that the more you can allow the past to just be a place where you've experienced life, that you may have a few fond memories of, but not some place that you try to recreate or live in, right? Then you'll be on your way to experiencing more happiness. Now, kind of the opposite of that is true too. A lot of us make the mistake of trying to live in the future instead of actually being present right now. And we think things like, well, when I accomplish X, Y, and Z, then I'll be happy, right? And it can be kind of confusing sometimes to differentiate between having dreams and goals, which are all future oriented, and not living there with them. So you may have heard that sometimes people fall into a trap of, I'll only be happy when, right? And it may not actually be stated that clearly, with being happy, or they may say something like, I can hardly wait until, or I can't imagine my life being any different until blah, right? So when you throw your attention to the present, it's just like when you throw it to the past, you're not being here now. And now is the only time that you truly have to experience happiness. Another thing that we kind of get stuck in at times that prevents us from feeling as much happiness as we could in a moment is not listening to our inner voices. Our inner voice, sometimes you can call it a gut feeling or your intuition. It kind of warns you when something's not quite right for you. And it can also let you know when something is really right, like do more of this. And the thing is that we can get so caught up in our heads and what we think we want and need to be happy that sometimes we can miss the more quiet calling of our inner knowings as to what it is that we really need to be doing. And I wrote down this quote here that I want to read to you that kind of speaks to this, because I can't say it as eloquently. So Rumi is a very revered poet, and he wrote, respond to anything that excites your spirit. So this is just really talking about that inner knowing of yours. If that inner knowing is going, yeah, hip, hip, hooray, then, maybe there's something to that you can explore so you can experience even more happiness. Okay. The fourth thing that often gets in the way of all of us having, the happiness that we really want is holding on to grudges or resentments, right? And it's really easy to do that, I think, because we haven't necessarily learned the right way to forgive. And I don't just mean forgive others, but it's also forgiving yourself. Because the grudges and resentments, all they do is they weigh you down, right? They make you upset. They make you angry. You feel victimized. And forgiveness is not about forgetting what happened. It's not about condoning what happened. Forgiveness is about accepting that it did happen and choosing to not let it control your life. Again, for a lot of us, until we get into the habit of what forgiveness is, that can seem like so much easier to say than to do. But I promise you, because I've had to do this myself, right? Once you truly understand that forgiveness is about you taking care of you, then it becomes a whole lot easier to do. Okay, so number 5. Number 5 is, have you ever noticed that when there's somebody in your life and you just know that if they did X, Y, and Z, they'd be so much better off? Okay, I know I'm not the only one who has thought something like that. So I'll bet one or two of you probably had too. And the thing is that when we spend our time trying to fix somebody else, we're ignoring ourselves, right? Other people are out there to enrich and enhance and live their lives, right? And it's not our job to fix anyone other than ourselves, right? And I know that for a lot of us, if we feel kind of out of control, we believe, not correctly, but we believe that if we can get everybody else under control, that then we'll feel better. The truth is that when you spend so much energy narrowing your options to just making sure that everybody else is doing what they're supposed to do so that you can do what you're supposed to do, right? It really does get in the way of you experiencing the beauty of your life as it is, And so that's another thing you might want to examine to see if you're doing and if it's getting in the way of your happiness. Number 6 is seeking perfection. Yeah, I know. It may not seem like many of us seek perfection, when you kind of look at the state of your life at times. But I think that we all do, right? Some of us have more propensity to seek perfection than others. And it may only be in certain things that we try to seek perfection, right? I mean, maybe you're searching for the perfect golf swing. I don't know, right? For me, I used to search for perfect grades when I was in school. And so I also, in my first marriage, I tried to figure out how to be the perfect wife for my husband instead of trying to figure out how to make my marriage healthy and happy for both of us, primarily for me, because I'm the only person I have control over. So when you think about seeking perfection, see if you can ratchet it back just a little bit. Because if you can learn how to just enjoy the experience, to grow from every experience that it doesn't turn out quite the way you may have wanted it to, then it's a whole lot easier to be happy. Okay, number 7, you've probably heard a lot about over the past few years, especially with all the news about Instagram and how there was some research that's saying it really hurts tweens and teens, self-esteem and all of that. And the basis of that is comparing yourself to others, right? When you compare yourself to others, you're always seen as either better than or less than. And guess how many times it's better than? Yeah, not that many. It's usually when you compare yourself to someone, you look for the negative stuff, right? And when you're focused on the negative stuff, then you're not happy, right? You're focused on all the lucky stuff. So the deal is, as much as you can, to allow yourself to be you, to do you, to share your unique gifts. And as you fully express yourself without regard to how well you do it in comparison to others, then it's a whole lot easier to be happy and enjoy the moment. Okay. Number 8 on my list of 8 things as to what can be getting in the way of experiencing happiness is something that I didn't really get for a while, right? It's like I had these influences of it and then I'd step away. The truth is that we bring on a lot of unhappiness for ourselves by consuming too much negative media, right? For me, I found that the news is too much negative media for me. So I don't watch the news anymore. That may or may not be the right thing for you. But the truth is that most media tends to be geared toward negativity and playing towards the other items that I already mentioned by sowing seeds of fear. Because as human beings, we are on the lookout for things to be careful of, right? Our fight, flight, freeze response and all of that stuff. So when we constantly feed negativity into ourselves, it's hard to be happy because we're so worried about what's going on here, what could happen with that. And I'm not saying that you need to stick your head in the sand about things. It's just monitor how much of it is presenting things as a challenge and how much of it is presenting things as something to be fearful of. So those are my 8 items of things that we tend to do to prevent ourselves from being happy. But I think the next good question for us to ask is, what causes a person to actually be happy, right? So let's talk about that from a biological perspective, because actually there are several neurotransmitters and hormones that play a role in happiness. And these include dopamine, which is a feel-good hormone, and I'm reading this, okay, that encourages you to repeat behaviors that result in pleasure. And I'm reading it because sometimes I get tongue-tied over these, and so I want to make sure I give you the right information. So the first one was dopamine. The second one is oxytocin. Now, you may know of oxytocin as the love hormone because it promotes feelings such as deep affection and empathy. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter that increases feelings of well-being, confidence, and belonging. Then there's endocannabinoids. This is the one I stumble over a little bit, so sorry. And they are something that's being researched currently, and they seem to play a role in experiencing pleasure. Actually, as an aside here, one of the endocannabinoids that gets released is anandamide. I believe I'm saying that correctly. And it gets released when you eat dark chocolate. So, you know, you may have heard that sometimes eating chocolate can help elevate your mood. Yeah, if it's dark chocolate, it can from a biological perspective. And then the last one that I want to bring up for us today is the endorphins. And endorphins help to relieve pain and enhance pleasure. Now, the thing is, all of these chemicals are produced within our bodies. And because they are, it just stands to reason that there is a genetic component to the amount of each of these neurotransmitters and hormones that we produce. Okay, so some people describe it as people have kind of a happiness set point that they kind of work within, right? And the way to think about this is that although your body does produce all these, and there can be a genetic component to the amount of each of these that we do produce, it's also super duper cool that we can each take steps to naturally improve our ability to produce and experience these neurotransmitters and hormones. And that's kind of what I want to talk about next, in that we can look at the keys to happiness. So the keys to happiness are not a set of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and if you do these 5 things, you're definitely going to be happier. It's more of a list of things that work for people in general, and you can find the things that work for you specifically, right? Because we're each unique. So just because exercise works great for me, it may not work as well for you. So you can try something else instead. And I've got over 25 things that are known to help enhance happiness for folks that you can experiment with. So you can find what works best for you in various situations. And I think they're all worth experimenting with, right? Because I don't know, I find them all fun. Hopefully you will too. So the first one I already mentioned, right? And it's exercise. You want to get up and move your body for at least 30 minutes a day to boost your mood by releasing endorphins. Now, I really resonate with this exercise. So I exercise about 2 hours a day. Now, I don't do it all at once, right? I instead get my exercise in throughout the day, although I do have a big hunk that I do in the morning, and I have another hunk that I do at lunchtime, but the rest of it is just kind of worked in throughout my day. So I constantly get the reminders of, oh yeah, this does feel good. I am happy. The second thing kind of ties in with the 8 items that I mentioned earlier of how we get into our way. It's about minding your thoughts, right? So it's a lot easier, I know, to say you need to stop doing something than it is to actually stop. So I have a strategy that I use to help me mind my thoughts, and I thought I'd share it with y'all because maybe it will help you too. So when I notice that I'm feeling stressed out or sad or upset, I pause and see, okay, what is it that I'm thinking about? If I'm thinking about things that are in the past or things that are in the future, or the comparisons or perfectionism, I kind of remind myself that my best and most productive thoughts only fall into one of three categories. They fall into ideas of love and compassion, right? They fall into ideas of health, and they fall into ideas of abundance, right? So those are the three categories: love, health, and abundance. And when I can shift my perspective of whatever it is that I was thinking about that had me feeling not happy, right? I can usually start finding my way back to happiness. And my thoughts then often lead me to the next thing I'd like for y'all to contemplate experimenting with to increase your happiness, and that's gratitude. I know it's been said ad nauseum, if you've looked at any kind of self-help stuff over the past, I don't know, 2,500 years, that practicing an attitude of gratitude is key to happiness. Well, it kind of is one of them because it stops negativity right in its track. If you can remind yourself of all that you appreciate in your life, by writing in a journal, meditating, showing appreciation to the people around you, or simply pausing for a moment to say thanks internally, you kind of elevate your thoughts, you elevate your attitude. So gratitude is another thing to play with. I think it's also really important to surround yourself with like-minded people. So we are social creatures, and we naturally reflect the emotions of those around us. So if you want to be happy, you need to make sure you're associating with happy people. And I have a really quick story about this. I recently met my youngest nephew, and he's almost a year old now. And we just, with everything that's been going on in the world, we haven't had a chance to get together. And so I can't tell you how happy it made me to have a little baby who was brimming over with happiness, because we were just kind of reflecting the happiness all around us. So it was great fun. Now, I know the same is true because I was a colicky baby, and my parents said I would scream and scream a lot of times, and then it wasn't much fun to have to parent somebody like that, right? So you can choose to associate, even when people that you're close to aren't always happy, but you can choose to associate with someone else who is. And it may not actually be in person. It may be a podcast that you listen to that's always upbeat. It may be a book that you read, but you just kind of surround yourself with happy people. Okay, this is going to sound silly, but there's real live research to prove that it's true. Smile. Yeah, all you have to do is smile, and smiling, a genuine smile, will actually elevate your mood because, get this, it releases both dopamine and serotonin, right? So that's really good stuff. Number 6 is get a theme song. Music is a great way to regulate your emotions and thoughts. I'd love to know if any of y'all have a theme song. If you do, would you let me know what it is in the chat or the comments? Because I love hearing about other songs that make people really happy. I recently have found a song that I haven't listened to since I was a teen, and it's King Tut by Steve Martin. I know many of you may not know that song, but it just cracks me up because it's just hilarious. It just reminds me of being a kid and how I laughed so hard at it. So it is an example of living in the past for a moment, but using it to elevate my mood in the present, and then getting back to the present and allowing that happiness to flow. Spending time outside is another great way to reconnect, allow negativity to flow away, and to just be really present. Spending time alone for some people is also a great way to reconnect with their happiness, because again, they get to let things flow away. For other folks, spending time alone is more stressful. And so for them, remember I said surround yourself with happy people? For them, that's probably going to be a better way for them to figure out how to get back to their happiness. I know this is going to sound maybe even self-indulgent, but eating well, making sure your body is fueled with good food can really elevate your mood. The next thing you can experiment with is doing what you love. There's a lot of talk now about finding your passion and doing what you're passionate about. That's kind of what this is. Number 11 of this list is to look at problems as projects or opportunities. We all have problems that we face in our life. And if we choose to look at problems as problems, right, it's kind of hard to be happy that you're having to deal with it. But if you look at problems as projects or opportunities or even a challenge, right, then it's easier to say, okay, that's what I'm dealing with. How can I make things work out the way I want them to? Which then brings us to another idea for building happiness, and that's to build resistance, right? So I'm not resistance. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I stumbled over my words. Build resilience, right? Resilience is the ability to bounce back when something happens that you didn't anticipate and you frankly don't like. Oh, I love Put Your Records On too. That's on my playlist. And Sherry, I don't know the song Savage. I'm going to have to look that one up. Okay, so going back to our list of things you can experiment with to bring out more happiness in your life, make a difference daily, right? What can you do to make a difference in your world or someone else's world that actually feels good to you? It feels philanthropic. It feels lovely. And that's a nice thing to do. I go out and clean creatures out of my pool. That makes me feel good, right? That I'm doing that, and then feeding the birds, right? That's something I do every day because it makes me feel good. Something else that can help you feel happy is to love and respect yourself. You can continue learning. Attending this is a great way for you to continue your learning. So I'm so thankful that y'all are here. Breathing deeply. I'm guessing that you've probably heard something about doing breath work or how your breath changes when you're feeling different emotions. When you breathe deeply, it actually sends a message to your nervous system that you're safe and that you can relax. And it's a whole lot easier to be genuinely happy when you're relaxed than when you're stressed out. The next item I have on my list here to share with y'all is to sleep soundly. Have you ever noticed that when things are going well, it's a whole lot easier to sleep soundly than when they're not? I have, and I'm hoping I'm not alone in that experience. But the more you can promote a good night's sleep for yourself, the easier it is to feel good and to feel happy. Now, I don't remember how many years ago this was, but it's at least 10, I'm guessing. Amy Cuddy did a TED Talk on power posing. And power posing is basically standing like a superhero. And it releases all kinds of those feel-good chemicals inside of us, believe it or not, as silly as it may sound, that will elevate your mood, help you to feel stronger, more confident, right? The next item on my list is to laugh, right? I love to laugh. And it's just a great way to release any stress that you may be having. It's also a way, when you laugh, most of the time it's because something is out of the ordinary. Something is exciting, something is different, or you resonate with something that you didn't expect to, right? So laughing can break us out of whatever state we were kind of stuck in. Since we're talking about happiness, I'll say a non-happy state, right? And so that's a great way to help move things through. Communicating kindly is another thing you can experiment with to elevate your mood. This one can be a little bit tricky to figure out how to do well at first, but I know that you'll each get the hang of it. You know how it is sometimes when you feel really stressed out and you want to snap at someone, just do it or whatever. Um, if you could take a step back and actually calm yourself with a couple deep breaths beforehand and think, okay, what's the most compassionate way for me to communicate what I need to say to this person, right? So say something that's compassionate to them at the same time as being compassionate to you, then it helps to take away some of the stress of a situation and allows you to elevate back to more happiness. The next idea to experiment with is to unplug regularly. And yeah, for a lot of us, I know stepping away from our phones or our computers can be a little bit stress inducing because that's how we get our work done. That's how we communicate with our tribes. You know, that's how we actually stay connected with those we love. And yet, too much of it can be draining. I sit in front of a computer most of the day for my work. So it is kind of hard to remind myself to unplug and to completely unplug. But I've managed to do it. And actually, my stress level has gone down as a result. So I'll be curious, if y'all have things like that happen for you too. The next one kind of reflects back to one of the things to stop doing, but it's really worth emphasizing. So I'm going to repeat it here. Forgive yourself and others for what may have happened in the past, because those grudges, guilt, shame, all that stuff doesn't serve you well in the present. You can take the lesson, move on with the lesson to live differently today. And then finally, my last idea here on this list might be another one that seems at first kind of silly, but I think it could work for some of you. I know it works for me. Look your best. That doesn't mean that you have to look like you're going out to, a swanky event every moment of the day. It just means, for what you have planned that day, look your best. At least brush your teeth. Do something to let yourself know that you're honoring yourself by taking care of yourself. So that was a really long list of ideas to experiment with to help you feel happier. And my hope is that because it is so incredibly long, that you'll find a few that really, really work for you, because you deserve to be incredibly happy. So with that, I'm going to check over in the comments and see if there are any questions that y'all have. Yeah. So I am happy to answer any questions y'all may have. I see a couple comments from, let's see, Mohammed Khan wrote, forget the past and look to your present and future. Yeah, it's really important to learn what you need to from your past, look towards your future while living in the present. That's a great comment, Mohammed. Thank you for posting that. Oh, okay. Hi, Kurt. So good to see you on here. Okay, so it's not necessarily a matter of forcing yourself to be happy no matter what. Okay, it's more a matter, I think, of finding opportunities for yourself to be happy, no matter how small they may be in the moment. Your comment makes me think that there's a lot going on in your life right now, and that you may be open to experimenting with little things, right? So a little thing could be watching something that makes you giggle, right? I'll do that. Listening to a song that makes you giggle. I've got a couple of those. It could be watching a show that makes you laugh. I think I already said that, sorry. Just anything that helps you to smile, right? Even if it is a memory from the past that makes you smile, You can think about it for a moment, just don't get stuck in it, and then see how you can create something like that now. So for me, one of the things that always used to make me smile and feel happier was I used to go out dancing a whole lot. And I really like to do salsa dancing. So we don't get out to dance much right now. So occasionally, we'll dance around the house. Sometimes I'll just put on salsa music and dance by myself. In fact, this morning, that was one of the things I did is I was listening to Santana as I was getting dressed. And that shifts my perspective a little bit. And so, Kurt, I would like to encourage you to play with a couple of the ideas that I threw out there to experiment with, instead of trying to force happiness, and see how maybe that might inch you closer towards the happiness that you truly want, despite whatever else may be going on for you right now. Okay, let's see. Are there any other questions here? Oh, can you read? Okay. Hi, Karen. Thank you so much for this question. The question is, can you repeat what you said about forgiving? Okay. So forgiving is about accepting what happened, learning whatever it is that you need to learn from it, and letting it go. Because forgiving is about you taking care of you, right? It's not about making anybody else wrong, even though it may have been wrong what they did. It's not about blaming, shaming, guilting yourself, right? Even though you wouldn't behave that way now, right? It's because you've learned. You've learned what you need to know about whatever the issue was that occurred in the past, right? And then when you let it go, you're more free to move forward instead of having that kind of anchor dragging you back to all that upset. What other questions do y'all have? Well, let's see. Is there anything else I really want you all to know as you're thinking about your questions? I think what I really want you to know is that happiness is an emotion that you can cultivate, right? So you know how in the US Constitution it says life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? So happiness is something that you can pursue. And my hope is that some of the ideas that I share with you about things you can experiment with to see how they work for you to increase the happiness in your life really are paths you can take. And I hope that they inspire you to figure out other things you can do to experience happiness. I'm not seeing any other questions come up. So what I'd like to do next is thank you all so very much for being here today. Thank you for the lovely questions. Oh, okay, Karen, yes, trying to write down what you said. What was that last part? Oh, move forward instead of having a weight kind of tugging you and tethering you to the past, right? Because you know how it is when, I don't know, I have a set of earbuds, right, that's actually wired, right? I haven't upgraded to all wireless throughout everything yet. So mine's actually wired. And you know how it is when you feel like you're stuck to something, you can't really move forward? That's what happens when you're holding on to the bad things that happened, right? When you haven't forgiven, right? You're feeling stuck, you're feeling tethered, you're feeling tied to them. And the only way to release that tie is to forgive, to say, it happened. I can accept that it happened. I can learn from it so I'm not in that situation again, or so I don't repeat that behavior. And then you feel so much more free. Happiness is, Gemma writes, happiness isn't a destination. It's a state of play and learning to experience your happiness, love, and light, everyone. Oh, Gemma, yes. I love that. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you. Oh, you're welcome, Karen. I think I see Teresa's question. Yeah, Teresa. Oh, look at those babies. I'm a dog and cat mama. So I have 2 dogs and 2 cats currently. And Teresa writes, can a person really be happy when they are alone most of the time? Yeah, I believe so. My belief, though, is my belief. And Teresa, I'd love for that to be your belief if you do feel like you're alone most of the time. The thing is that we all have the ability to have different perspectives of what we're experiencing, and those perspectives influence our mood. So there's a really interesting tie between thoughts and emotions, right? So when you think these thoughts, you typically have these emotions, right? And when you have these emotions, you typically have these kinds of thoughts, right? So it's kind of like a, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? So happiness really can be something that you can cultivate regardless of whether or not you're surrounded by people. It looks like you're surrounded by dogs based on that picture. And dogs are incredible, for me, incredible sources of happiness because they make me laugh so much trying to, understand their language. They're great at understanding our language, right? But I'm not so great at understanding theirs sometimes. So it's a lot of fun playing and figuring out what they've got going on. And if you're truly unhappy being alone, Teresa, you might figure out ways for you to have more interaction with folks, right? How can you have more time that you spend with people who are happy? And how can you incorporate that? Those might be some interesting questions to ask yourself to see if you can't move yourself more towards happiness as a more sustained emotion. What other questions do we have? Bonjour. Okay. I'm not quite sure how to say your name. I took French in high school, but I don't remember reading it that well. So Kev is what I'm going to go with. Hello from Texas. Thank you for joining us from France. Gemma writes, I love my own company, but I do shut myself off from others, and sometimes I like to recharge my energy. Yeah. So that's a really important thing. So I'm sure y'all have heard of introverts and extroverts. And one of the ways to think about an introvert and an extrovert is that a true introvert recharges their energy just by themselves. A true extrovert recharges their energy just in the company of others. And the truth is, I don't think there's I shouldn't say that. I don't think there are many people at either extreme. I think most of us fall in the middle sometime. And it may depend on what you've been doing recently as to which way you need to recharge, right? So you may need to recharge being around some folks, or you may need to recharge just by spending some time out in nature, listening to the birds sing. It's something to experiment with, right? That's another thing I'd really like for y'all to take away from this, this conversation today, right? Is finding your path to happiness is not going to be like anybody else's. I really do encourage you to experiment. And I know sometimes when you're in the not happy states, that it can be really hard to want to do anything to experiment. That's when you kind of start slowly and you try the ideas of what is it that genuinely can make me smile, right? What can I genuinely smile about? Is there something I can watch or listen to that will make me laugh, right? Sometimes you do need to have a little bit of external support to get your momentum going towards happiness. And, then there are also folks who just legitimately have biological things within them that require them to need a little bit more than just experimenting with some of these ideas that I have. Some people actually need to have prescriptions to help them either over a hump or to deal with their particular biology, right? So don't feel bad if this stuff doesn't work for you on the first try. Experiment. And if it still doesn't work, after you feel like you've done enough experiments, then it's time to talk to your doc and say, hey, doc, this is what I've got going on. This is what I've tried. What's your suggestion, right? Because they'll know you and they'll be able to work with you. Okay. Darshan writes, can a person be happy if they have really bad social anxiety? Yes. Yes. You can definitely be happy. Happiness doesn't depend on having others, although it can be part of it, right? So you may recall that I talked about all these different things you can try to experiment with to find happiness, right? And most of them don't require other folks. So you probably want to play with some of them and see what can help you to feel happier, Darshan. And then additionally, social anxiety is, from my understanding, if I had to boil it down, right, it's about fear, right? Anxiety is always about fear, fear of not being safe, fear of not being loved, right? There's fear, profound fear with an anxiety. And the way to kind of help yourself with that, right? If you talk to a therapist or a psychiatrist, and they decide that you don't need medication to help you with it, then one of the things that I think can help a lot with it is to breathe deeply, because breathing starts sending messages to your nervous system that you're safe and that things are okay. Meditation works for some folks. Actually visualizing being with other people, right, can help with social anxiety sometimes too. So it kind of comes back to my basic philosophy about a lot of things is nobody can tell you exactly what's right for you. It's going to take some experimentation and a willingness to experiment on your part in order to find your path to happiness. What other question? Okay, Megan writes, isn't happiness going after what you need rather than what you want? By extension, in getting your needs met, your wants will be diminished or be fulfilled. Oh, okay, let's leave this one up so I can really dive into this. Okay, isn't happiness going after what you need? Well, okay, Megan, this is a really interesting question. It really, I think, depends on your perspective. Because what do you need, right? What do you need? You need to have air to breathe. Does breathing air make you happy? It makes it so that you can be happy, right? So that you can continue to exist, right? But I don't know that it actually makes you happy to breathe in every situation, right? Because it happens automatically, so we aren't really aware of it. So I think maybe the way I might phrase that differently is being present. Being present is probably the easiest way to think of being happy, right? So when there's something that you want, right, that's kind of more future, and need is kind of more present. So maybe that's what you're getting at. So need is more present and want is more future. So when you're working on what you want, right, that can actually be fulfilling a need for significance or to provide value or to fully express yourself. So I think that's how I would rephrase that for me just a little bit. And so the second part of your question was, by extension, in getting your needs met, your wants will diminish or be fulfilled. I think that can be pretty true too, because if your needs are to feel that you're fulfilling your purpose, then I think that your wants start to happen naturally. I feel like I'm waving my hands a lot. I hope that that was meaningful, Megan. It was really an interesting question for me to think about. Thank you so much for asking it. Actually, the 2 questions. What other questions do we have? Christopher writes, I enjoy being alone. Socializing requires extra effort for me. Okay, I'll be truthful. Christopher, it does for me too. I have to be in the right mood and I have to allow myself a little bit of space on either side of it so that I can resettle. So because of what your comment is, I would say that on the scale of introversion to extroversion, right, you tend more towards being an introvert than you do an extrovert. And that's a great way to be. I go back and forth. I think I'm more in the middle than I used to be. So it isn't something that you are stuck with, right? Being an introvert or an extrovert. It can shift for you over time. What other questions? Okay, Harsha, oh my goodness. Harsha, I'm not sure how to pronounce your middle name there. Fernandez, I can say kind of. So I apologize. If somebody insults you, how can you avoid not thinking about it and not spoiling your mood? Okay, if someone insults you, the deal is they're actually telling you more about them than they're telling you about you, right? That's the thing to remember, because anyone who chooses to say something hurtful purposefully to another person is not very kind. And you might be able to say something in return along the lines of, and you have to make it yours because this is Karen talk, right? And Karen talk isn't your talk. So you could say something like, my feelings are hurt by what you said, and then just leave, right? You don't have to continue to be there and put up with that. What other questions? Okay, Gemma writes, I was diagnosed with PTSD 8 months ago, and I've had symptoms since I was a teenager. And after losing my late husband, a nervous breakdown, learning, and don't know much about it. Oh my goodness, girl. Understanding is going to help, I think, but I need to be my own friend. Absolutely, Gemma. Absolutely. So you've got a lot going on. And it's not all easy stuff you're dealing with. So you're right. Being your own best friend. And I think that can also be rephrased as being compassionate with yourself, right? Compassionate is a big deal. So it's learning to lead more from your inner knowing. Some people might say your heart instead of your head, right? So it's about, again, compassion, compassion, compassion as you work through everything that you're working through so you can learn what you need to learn, understand the reactions that you've had to things, and then become stronger. I recently heard a story about a Japanese practice of rebuilding pottery after it's been broken. They mixed together gold or other precious metals with kind of the bonding agent, the glue to stick everything back together, so that when they put it all back together, there are these veins of beautiful color. And I think that's kind of what we each get to experience throughout our own lives. I don't know of anyone whose life is truly magical and they never, ever, ever have anything that hurts them, right? And it's when we're able to take those hurts and learn from them and grow because of them that we're actually kind of putting ourselves back together in a very beautiful way that allows us to be more of who we are and hopefully even inspire others to face their trials in a helpful way for them instead of getting stuck in them. Megan Rose, all right, it is helpful, thank you. Oh, I'm so glad you thought it was helpful, Megan. Oh, you're welcome, Harsha. I'm glad it was. I'm glad it was helpful. Oh, and Gemma, thank you all so much. I really appreciate that. What other comments or questions do y'all have? Well, if there's nothing else coming up, I'd like to thank you each again for your presence, your attention, your interaction. It's so lovely to be able to have these discussions with you all. Oh, thank you, Christine. Thank you so much. And I really do hope that you'll experiment with one or two of these ideas to see if you can increase the happiness that you experience today and every day. Thank you so much. Y'all be well.